It can be difficult to define a fighting game. Where do we draw the lines? Are they simply games where you punch and kick your opponent? Well, no, that's obviously too vague. Or are they games in which you have to deplete an opponent's health to zero? Well, then Call of Duty 1v1s could be maybe a fighting game. But seriously, where is the line drawn?
I dare you to step over this line.
Okay, I'm a steppin'.
I dare you to step over this one. This one.
Lots of people wouldn't consider games in the Smash franchise fighting games, even though they've got the word fighter in the name of the genre, platform fighters. For this reason, as a community, we're not the only ones who have trouble defining what makes a fighting game. But I think that's an interesting topic to explore.
Best fighting games. And what the holy dumb shit? Excuse me?
Time and time again, the FGC adopts certain games for competitions even though there's almost nothing tying it to the others you would see at a tournament. There are countless games that have been influenced by fighting games that incorporate common ideas into their mechanics, and there's even more out there that share lots of similarities just because of their approach to balancing. So with that, I want to talk about some fighting games that aren't quite fighting games. And before I get started here, I'm aware that some of these might seem like a stretch, and there will be plenty I've missed, but these are just my favorite examples I want people to try if they haven't yet. Originally, I was going to mention the Tales of franchise here because there's a lot of examples of them being inspired by fighting games. Some characters straight up do Street Fighter moves, games in the past incorporated motion inputs for special skills, and the Tales games have been evolving their combo systems and defensive mechanics for a long time, to the point where some of them kinda do play like a fighting game. But as I thought about it, I figured this example was a bit too much of a stretch for an RPG example. And then I remembered a certain game that I'd been putting off for a long time now. So, the first game is Indivisible. It went somewhat under the radar for me. I had heard of it, but didn't really think much of it because there were just other games that had my attention at the time. From the developers of Skullgirls, Indivisible's combat is about chaining attacks together to take down your opponents. Each character has a few types of moves to target certain weaknesses and vulnerabilities, leading to the player crafting different teams and pushing certain advantages. This also means learning and understanding the unique playstyles of each character is imperative. Some characters are great against groups of enemies, others can heal your party depending on where they attack and move around the battle, and one character even has a stance that she can switch in and out of to do different kinds of attacks. And obviously, this game would not be considered a fighting game because there's no way to fight against another human being, but what it does have is that inherent depth. Instead of just taking hits like other semi-turn-based RPGs, you can parry attacks to heal yourself instead of taking damage, which rewards players for learning certain quote-unquote matchups. There's also a super meter, which is dependent on landing attacks and combos as well as parrying successfully on defense. The game has players manage resources and learn matchups very similarly to a fighting game, which makes sense considering it was developed by the same company who made Skullgirls. Indivisible was a treat to play as it had elements of Metroidvanias and semi-turn-based combat that feels incredibly satisfying to play considering it's just all so active. If RPGs aren't your thing, here's an example that more closely resembles a traditional one-on-one fighter. I'm talking about Lethal League. This game caused quite a stir in the FGC back in 2014 as a game that boasted tons of promise. It's a self-proclaimed high-speed ball game in which players simply hit the ball at each other back and forth until someone messes up their timing. The controls are easy to learn, the concept is simple enough to understand at a glance, and damn, this game is fun as hell. It's hard to say for sure how this game should be classified, but what is for certain is that there's pretty much every element of what makes a fighting game. Players have to manage life bars, you can build super meter to pull off ultra powerful attacks, and there's ways to mix up your opponent to open them up and get the hit.
Oh my god, there's no reacting to that.
As someone who has played a lot of fighting games, it truly is a breath of fresh air to see certain games try and switch up the genre into something new. I think my favorite part of Lethal League is that it's not afraid to be itself and have fun. What I mean by that is so many fighters nowadays definitely cater to the competitive crowd, as those are the people who invest in the game long term. But there's something to say about fighting games that include wacky modes for people to just pick up and play or explore the mechanics in a new light. For example, Lethal Volley. It converts the fighting game aspect into volleyball, but still keeps the players feeling right at home. Not only that, it opens up the gameplay for a 2v2 format instead of 1v1, which can turn the whole concept on its head. And as I'm talking about this, it's interesting how volleyball seems to be such a common game to turn into a fighting game or vice versa. I can think of quite possibly half a dozen different examples, and some are more notable than others.
Play with a friend, or play with yourself. Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball.
But one of the most fun examples of a volleyball fighting game, and possibly the biggest departure from actual volleyball, is Windjammers. Once again, I'm stretching a bit, but as a game with intense one-on-one gameplay, unique characters with special meters, and stages that pose extra challenges on the flow of a match, I'd say Windjammers actually fits here quite nicely. While Lethal League is more direct in its combat aspect, Windjammers takes a more roundabout approach. Instead of trying to hit your opponent with the disc, you want to get it past them into the back of their net. What's interesting though is that there's multiple ways of doing this, the simplest being to just throw the disc in a way that the opponent can't predict. The more interesting ways include using certain characters' techniques to throw the disc sideways, which inflicts pushback on the opponent. If you can get them close to their net and throw it this way, you can force your opponent into the net, gaining yourself some points. There's also ways to dizzy your opponent as well, which is another fighting game staple. That's an oversimplification of the overall systems, as there's other ways to fake out your opponent. I mostly just wanted to talk about Windjammers because it's really fun, and it's almost always on sale, so go check it out. Now it's time for me to reveal one of my favorite not fighting games of all time. A game that I've pretty much never seen anyone mention. It's a game so obscure that I'd bet money only a few of you will know it, and even less have actually touched it. It's so out there that it's not even the titular title of the game that it's in. The game itself is called Sports Friends. It came out in 2014 as a bundle of 4 games on the PlayStation, since it used PlayStation Move for one of them. Upon further research, I found out that you can get the game on Steam too, so if it ever goes on sale, do yourself a favor and get this to play with your friends. The game that I want to talk about is called BaraBariBall. There is no way to say that without it sounding silly. I've done so many takes and I just went with that one. Essentially, if all the other games that I mentioned were a take on the traditional 2D fighter, BaraBariBall is a take on the platform fighter subgenre. How does it work, you might ask?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked.
So pretty much every character is Jigglypuff from Smash, since they have multiple jumps. If you run out of jumps and fall into the water below, you lose a point. How do you gain points? You have to grab the ball and throw it into the opponent's water on their side of the stage. The whole time you're trying to do that, they'll pretty much do everything in their power to stop you. The player with the ball moves a lot slower than the player with free hand, so it comes down to managing the space between you and your adversary, while also trying to figure out the best way to move the ball to the goal.
Yeah, sport volleyball is kind of like a sports fighting game. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's what we've been telling everybody for the last 2 years.
You can also just have a slugfest trying to make your opponent lose points anytime they've gained them by forcing them to use their jumps after getting hit. Some characters are better at this than others though. Popo is exceptionally good at keeping his opponent under pressure since his up special reaches so high and has insanely strong knockback. Sari, on the other hand, is nimble and can close the distance quickly, making her hard to run away from and hard to pin down when she has the ball. Joshi, I'm honestly not sure what Joshi is supposed to be good at, and I never use him. I hate you, Joshi. Seriously. The best part of the game is the stages. Some of them are so absolutely busted and unbalanced for what the game is, but that's actually kinda hype. Since there's only 3 characters, counterpicking the proper stage against them is actually really important. Popo shines in stages that force close quarters and have shallow waters.
Oh, got greedy, but he just wanted to die in order to get the position.
Take it up,
back.
take it in the sky.
Yep.
Alright, that's what the counter pick's supposed to be like.
But if Sari can get distance from her opponent, she can kinda just place the ball down wherever she wants.
Oh, pressure!
And
Pressure is so hard to deal with.
And Joshi can go drown off the deep end. I don't know. I don't care. BaraBariBall was obviously not meant to be a competitive game, but it makes for an awesome party game among friends. And all of this is to say, as I've said in past videos, I really hope we get more of these kinds of things in the future. Fighting games are sources of great fun, but it's rare to see people actually stick around for the more casual stuff. I'm not sure if it's just that the demographics don't carry over well, or if it's an issue of player retention in the fun stuff, but it might be worth looking into. I played literally hundreds of games of BaraBariBall with my friends that would never play me in Smash, let alone something more serious like Street Fighter. It would be awesome to see something that bridges those experiences together.
Windjammers is the next generation of the FGC. Oh, you're playing Tekken and you drown in pools? Oh, you're playing Street Fighter and you drown in pools? But oh, you're killing it in Windjammers? But then people that don't drown in pools in these other games are also still killing it in Windjammers? Yeah. This is the perfect game to get hype, to make sure that your fighting game tournament experience is legit and lit and so much fun at all times. Play this game.
You said it. You know, despite being released in 1994, Windjammers really is a game of the future.
My biggest takeaway from this thought experiment is that the FGC isn't just about the games we play, it's a mindset. Fighting games aren't about reducing your opponent's life to zero or doing complex motion inputs. Really, deep down, it's about the friends you make along the way. Nah, I'm sorry, I couldn't even do that with a straight face. But it kinda is true. I've met incredible people through the FGC, and sometimes playing these games with them is like having a full-on conversation without words. No two matches are exactly the same, so while learning about a game, you're also learning about the person on the other side. It's a feeling that you just don't really get with team games or anything that lacks the direct contact fighters put you in. It's just something to think about, I guess. That's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.